Hello everyone, welcome to Pre-Algebra. In this video, I'm going to talk about solving percent problems. So these are basically word problems, typically consisting of like one statement where we have to translate the question into an equation. It's going to involve a percent and we want to solve it for the unknown. Okay, so let me start by saying we solve percent problems by translating the percent problem into an equation. So by translating the percent problem into an equation. And then once we have the equation, we can use the techniques that we learned in the module on basic algebra to solve it. Okay, so here's an example. Let's say we're asked, what is 50% of 48? Okay, so we want to translate each part of this into some part of an equation, right? Whether it's a variable, whether it's the equal sign. So the what, the thing that we're looking for, the what, that's going to be our unknown, right? So we'll call that, say, x. You can use whatever variable name you want. X is the one typically used. Is, right, means equals. So that's equals. 50%, right, the percentage here, we have choices on this. You can either write, I'll do it on the side here, you can either write 50% as a decimal. So remember, to write it as a decimal, you move the decimal point 2 places to the left, so this would be 0.5, or you could write 0.50. Or if you write 50% as a fraction, this would be 50 over 100, right? Which of course we could simplify to 1/2 in this case. Typically we convert it into a decimal, but there's times where we actually want to write it over 100. We want to convert it into a fraction. So typically we write this as a decimal. So 0.50. Remember, of means multiplication. So the of here, this is multiplication. And then finally, the number here is just a number, right? 48. So we could just write 48. So this equation is x is equal to 0.50 times 48. I'll write in parentheses so it's cleaner. You can see it's multiplication. Now, this is nice, right? The x is already isolated. So all I need to do is multiply those together. So I'll do that on the side here. So 0 times 8 is 0, 0 times 4 is 0, put a 0 here. 5 times 8 is 40, so put a 4. 5 times 4 is 20, plus 4 is 24. And then I add, and then since in the factors there's 2 decimal places, I need to move decimal place over twice, so that's what's going to be the answer. So in this case, x is equal to 24. Which makes sense, right? 50% is half, right? So half of 48 is 24. So that's the correct answer. Okay, here's another example. What is 200% of 6? So let's translate this. What is our variable, right? So we'll call it x. Is equals 200%, I want to write that as a decimal or as a fraction, but in this case, I'll just write it as a decimal. So it'll be 2.00. Of means multiplication, right, times, and then 6. So this is just going to be 2 times 6, which of course is 12. And that would be the answer. And we could check it, right? 12 is 200% of 6. It's twice 6. Okay, what if you have something more complicated where you have a mixed number? So let's try this one. What is 66 2/3% of 33? Okay, so in this case, well, what does the what is, let's start translating. The what is x, right? That's our unknown. Is equal 66 2/3%. That's not going to be so easy to put in decimal form because decimal goes on forever. It doesn't stop. It just repeats. So what I would do is, first of all, write that as an improper fraction. So if I convert this, I'll do it on the side here. So 66 2/3 as improper fraction would be 66 times 3 plus 2 over 3, right? And that turns out to be 200 over 3. So this is 200/3%. Now remember, I can either convert it into a decimal or I can put it over 100. In this case, it's going to be better if we put it over 100. So if I write that over 100, right, I remove the percent sign, put it over 100. Well, this is the same as 200 over 3 times 1 over 100. And this is going to be, I can simplify it, right? 100 goes into 100 once, 200 twice. So this is going to be 2/3. So really what I did is I wrote the percent as a fraction instead of as a decimal. So this is going to be 2/3. Of means multiplication, and then 33 here. So sometimes it's better to write the percent as a fraction, not as a decimal. It depends on the problem. So now I need to multiply these, right? So 3 goes into 3 once. I can simplify a little bit. 3 goes into 33 11 times. So if I multiply, this is going to be 2 times 11, 22, over 1 times 1. So this is just going to be 22. So x is equal to 22. So 22 is 66 2/3% of 33. Okay. How about this? 30% of what number is 120? So again, translate. So here we probably do want to write it as a decimal, so that'd be 0.3 or 0.30. Of means multiplication. What number, right, that's going to be our variable. What number, so we'll call it, say, x. So this will be x is equals 120. So now to solve this for x, since it's being multiplied by 0.30, I need to divide by 0.30, but whatever I do to one side, I do to the other side. So this cancels. So I have x equals, I'll have to do this out. You could also use 0.3, but I'll write it as 0.30. So I need to move this two places. Decimal is going to pop up there. 30 goes into 120 4 times. And now if I subtract, I have 0, bring down next digit 0. 30 goes into 0 0 times. I get 0 again, 30 goes into 0 0 times. Right? You can't forget those two zeros. So x is equal to 400 in this case. So that would be our answer. So 30% of 400 is 120. Okay, here's another one. 0.75%. So it's a very small percentage, right? Of what number is 24? So again, I'm going to translate, right? I'm going to write my percentage as a decimal. So I have to move that decimal point 2 places to the left. So this is actually going to become 0.0075. Of means multiplication. what number we'll call x or y or whatever we want, let's say x in this case, is equals 24. So to solve this, I need to divide by 0.0075, right? Both sides. So to get 1x, to isolate the x, since it's being multiplied by 0.0075, I need to divide by 0.0075. So then these will cancel and I'll get 1x. But whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. So x equals, I'll do this on the side here, so I need to move it, 4 places now, right? So this decimal has to go 4 places, which means I have to add 4 zeros. And then it'll pop up here in the answer. And then 75 goes into 240 3 times. So this will be 15, 1, 21, 22. I subtract, I'm going to get 15, bring down the next 0. 75 goes into 150 2 times. 2 times 75 is 150. Subtract, right? I have 0, bring down the next 0. 75 goes into 0, 0. I'm going to keep getting 0 here, and I need another 0 there. So x is equal to 3,200, right? 3,200. It makes sense it's a large number, right? Because 0.75% is a very small percentage. It's less than 1%. So 0.75% of 3,200 is 24. That sounds reasonable. Okay, what if the unknown is a percent, right? What if the unknown is a percent? So far, the unknown has been a number. What if it's actually a percent? Let's look at a couple of questions like that. So here's the percent problem. 13 is what percent of 52? So now the unknown is going to be our percent, right? We'll translate this. 13 is equals what percent? I'll just call x for now. So x, and then times 52. So by the way, you could write this as 52x, right? It doesn't matter. X times 52 is the same as 52x equals 13. And I'm just changing sides. I'm putting the variable on the left-hand side. So how do I solve this? Well, since x is being multiplied by 52, I want to get 1x, so I have to divide by 52. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other side. But we're not quite done, right? I need to convert this. Right now, it's a fraction, or I could also write it as a decimal value. In fact, you could simplify this, right? 13 goes into 52 4 times, so this is really just 1/4. So I want my answer, because my unknown was a percent, right? It's what percent. I need to convert this fraction into a percent. Or had you written it as a decimal, if you divided this out and got a decimal value, which if we do this, it'll be 0.25, right? So I'm going to divide this out. 2, 0, 4 goes into 25 times. So another way of writing it is x is equal to 0.25. Either way is fine, right? But we want it as a percent. So we have to remember back in the first section, in section 6.1, how do we convert a fraction to a percent or a decimal to percent? We multiply by 100, right? And then put a percent sign. So you can either do it this way, multiply the fraction by 100. So let's say 4 goes into 4 once, 4 goes into 125 times. So this is going to be 25 over 1, which is 25, and then put the percent sign. Or you could multiply the decimal by 100, but remember that's the same thing as moving the decimal point 2 places to the right, right? So this becomes 25 and then put the percent. It's the same exact answer. Of course, it has to be the same answer. But you have the choice of either writing it as a fraction or as a decimal. But if the unknown is a percent, ultimately you have to multiply by 100 and put that percent sign there. Okay, here's another example. $35 is what percent of 21? Okay, so I'm going to translate. 35 is equals what percent, I'm going to call that x, of times 21. But then I'll write this as 35 is 21x. And then I'm going to put the variable on the left-hand side. 21x is equal to 35. Okay, how do I solve this? Well, I want to get x by itself, so I have to divide by 21. Then I can simplify that, right? Because 7 goes into 35 5 times. 7 goes into 21 3 times. So x here is really equal to 5/3. But it's not written as a percent yet, right? I need to convert that to a percent. So how do I convert that to a percent? Well, I can multiply by 100. Right? Remember, converting a fraction to a percent, you multiply by 100. And then put the percent sign. So if I do that, I'm going to get 500 thirds percent. Now, you might want to write this as a mixed number, right? Because right now it's an improper fraction. So we could do that. We could divide, right? So 500 divided by 3. What's that going to be? 1. Then 3 into 20 is 6. Subtract, bring down to 0. 3 into 20 is 6 again. And my remainder is going to be 2, right? So another way of writing this is it's 166 and 2/3%. Okay, in this case, it made a lot more sense to work with fractions and then multiply by 100 to convert it to a percent. Either one's correct. It depends on what you want for the answer, whether you want it as a mixed number in percent or as an improper fraction with a percent. Okay, so another way that we can solve percent problems is using proportions. So let me show you this other way. You may find this easier. It's up to you on which method you want to use. So you can also solve percent problems using proportions. And the goal is to set up a proportion as the following form. It's going to be the amount, so amount over the base, I'll explain what these are in a second, equals the percent without the percent symbol over 100. So for example, if we have this percent problem, say what is 50% of 210? Okay, so in this case, the what is going to be the amount. Obviously, the 50, right, is the percent, and it's just the 50. You don't need the percent symbol, so this is the percent. And I'll say just the 50. And then the base is the 210 here. And so how do we figure out the base? Because it's sort of difficult to determine which one's the amount, which one's the base. So the rule that you want to use, the base, is always going to be the number after the of, after that keyword of. So I'll say it's the number after the of keyword. Okay, so to solve this particular problem, right, we have I always start with the base, right? Because that's the one that we have to figure out first. After the of is 210. So the base is going to go in the denominator of the first ratio, the left-hand ratio. The what is the amount. That's our unknown in this case, right? That's our unknown x. So that'll be x equals, and then 50 is our percent, and it's always over 100. Notice here now I have a proportion I can solve. How do we solve proportions? Well, we spent a while on this on the last module, module 5. We solve it by cross multiplication, okay? Now, to make the numbers a little bit smaller, we can simplify the 50 over 100, right? That's just 1/2. So let me simplify that. So this is 1/2. And now I cross multiply, right? So I multiply upper left times bottom right. So 2 times x is 2x equals, and then bottom left times upper right, 210 times 1 is going to be 210. And then to get x by itself, I have to divide both sides by 2. Right? That'll give me 1x, but whatever I do to one side, I do to the other side. So I'll do that over here. So 210 divided by 2, this is 1. Subtract, bring down to 1. 2 goes into 1 0 times, 0. And then subtract, bring down the next 0. 2 goes into 10 5 times. So the x here is 105. And that's our answer, right? So if I go back to the problem, 105 is 50% of 210. That's correct, right? It's half of 210. Okay, here's another example. And again, we'll just solve all of these using proportion. So what is 1/10%? So it's a very small percentage, right? Of 35. So in this case, right, again, always start with the base. So that's the number after the of, so that's our 35. The what, again, is going to be our amount. It's our variable, our unknown, so that's x. And then the percent is 1/10 over 100. Okay, so I'm going to cross multiply, right? I can solve this now by cross multiplication. So upper left times bottom right, that's going to be 100x equals, and then bottom left times upper right, well, 35 times 1/10, I'll do it on the side over here. I can simplify a little bit, right? 2 goes into 10 5 times. 2 sorry, did that wrong. 5 goes into 10 2 times. 5 goes into 35 7 times. So this is 7 times 1 over 1 times 2. That's just 7/2. And then finally, I want to divide, right? To get x by itself, I have to divide both sides by 100. So x equals, well, we can do this division. Remember, you can write 7/2 over, write the 100 as 100 over 1. So this is equal to 7/2 times the reciprocal, right? 1 over 100. And that's going to be 7 over 200. So that would be the answer. 7 over 200. Now, if for some reason you wanted your answer as a decimal, you could just convert that fraction into a decimal, right? You could divide this out. If you do 7 divided by 200, I have to put a bunch of zeros in there. So 200 goes into 70 0 times. I would subtract, right? 7, 0, bring down the next digit, 0. 200 goes into 700 3 times. So this would be 600. Subtract, bring down the next 0. 200 goes into 1,000 5 times. And then I would end up with 0 here. So another way of answering it as a decimal, it would just be 0.35. Again, either one's correct. It just depends on what. Sometimes my open math will be very specific. It will want it either as a fraction or as a decimal. Other times, it doesn't matter how you write the answer. Okay, here's another example. 20% of what number is 150? Okay, so now the unknown, the what number, right, the x, that's going to be our base, right, because it's after the of. So x is going to go here. The other number will be the amount, 150. And then the percent, obviously, is the 20 over 100. So once you have this set up, we can solve it using cross multiplication. Actually, I can simplify this a little bit. Let me write 20 over 100 as 1/5. Okay, so now if I multiply upper left times bottom right, 150 times 5. Right, this is 0, 25, 2, so that'd be 750. Equals, and then bottom left times upper right, x times 1. Well, that's easy, that's x. Actually, that's nice, we're done, right? The x is already isolated, so the answer is going to be x is equal to 750. Okay, here's another example. Let's say we're told 15 is 33.33% of what number? Okay, so again, we're gonna solve this using proportion. So we need to set up our proportion. Remember, the left ratio is amount over the base. So again, I always start with the base, right? The base is going to be the thing after the of, right? The number after the of. Well, in this case, the number after the of is our unknown, right? Of what number? So that's going to be x. So our base will be x. That'll be in the denominator. And the numerator is going to be the amount. That's going to have to be the 15 in this case. Equals, and then it's always the percent. So 33.33 over 100. Okay, and then we're going to solve this. But what I would do first is convert your mixed number, 33.33, convert that into an improper fraction. So, of course, remember, you multiply 3 times 33 plus 1, that's 100 over 3 over 100. And then you could probably simplify this as well, right? We can divide those fractions. So 100 thirds divided by 100 over 1 is the same as times 1 over 100 times the reciprocal, right? Flip it. The hundreds will cancel, and I'll end up with 1/3. Just makes it cleaner. So this problem now becomes 15 over x is equal to 1/3. So now to solve it, I'm going to use cross multiplication, right? So upper left times bottom right. That's going to be 15 times 3, which is 45, equals bottom left times upper right. X times 1 is x. And then I'm done, right? So x, it's already isolated. X is equal to 45. That would be my answer. Okay, what if the unknown is a percent? So let's say I have, let's say I have a problem like this. So 10 is what percent of 8? Okay, so I want to solve it using proportions. So my base is going to be the 8, right? Remember, it's the thing after the of, so 8. The amount is going to be the other number, which is 10. And notice here that my unknown is my percent, right? So that's going to be x over 100. And then I want to solve this for x. So again, I'm going to use cross multiplication. I could simplify the 10/8, but let's just leave it in this case. So I'll multiply upper left times bottom right. So 10 times 100 is 1,000 equals bottom left times upper right. 8 times x is 8x. I'm just going to put the variable on the left-hand side. And now to get x by itself, I need to divide both sides by 8, right? Since it's being multiplied by 8, I want 1x, I'll divide by 8. So this cancels, and the x here is equal to, if I divide this out, this is 1, right? Subtract, bring down the 0, 8 into 20 is twice. It'll be 16. Subtract, bring down this 0. 8 into 40 is 5 times. So this is 125. And notice here, I don't need to do anything further. The answer already is a percent. Because of how it's set up as a proportion, if the unknown is a percent, the answer already is a percent. So I can just write percent here, and that is correct. It's going to be 125%, right? 10 is 125% of 8. Remember when we did it earlier, when I just wrote it as an equation, I did have to do that one additional step. Here, let me actually go back to that. Let me solve this problem again and show you the difference. So if we did this using the other technique, so 10 is what percent of 8? Then translating this into an equation, right? We had 10 equals, we just called this x of times 8. So this is 8x is equal to 10. And now if I divide and solve for x, notice that it's just going to be a fraction, or it's going to be a decimal depending on how you want to write it. So you could either write it as 5/4, or you could write it as, if you divide it out, it's 1.25. And then we have to make it into a percent because it's not a percent yet. Okay, so I'd have to multiply. I'd either multiply 5/4 by 100. So this is 1, this is 25, and then 5 times 25 is 125 over 1. So now it's a percent, right? So, or I'd multiply 1.25 times 100, but that's the same thing as moving the decimal point 2 places to the right. So this would be 125. Okay, so in that case, if I set it up just as an equation where my unknown is percent, I have to remember that last step of actually writing it as a percent. But if you use a proportion to solve it, then you don't have to worry about it being a percent.
Are we back?
Okay, here's another example. 1.4 is what percent? So again, our unknown is a percent of 8. Okay, so again, let's set this up as a proportion. So the base is going to be the thing after the of, which is the 8. The amount will be the other number in this case, which is a 1.4. And that's got to equal the percent, which is our unknown, right? We're trying to find the percent, so that's our unknown x over 100. So there's my proportion. I want to solve it. Here's where I use cross multiplication, right? So upper left times bottom right. Well, 1.4 times 100 is going to be 140. Remember, it's just moving the decimal point 2 places to the right if you multiply by 100. Equals, and then 8 times x is 8x. So if let me write it this way. I'll write the variable on the left-hand side. Again, it doesn't matter, but often I will do that. Just keep it cleaner. How do I find x? How do I solve for x? I just simply divide by 8. Right, that will give me 1x, so I've isolated the x. So let me do this division over here, 140 divided by 8. So this is going to be 1. Right, I'll subtract, so I get 6. I bring down the 0. 68 goes into 60, let's see, 7 times. So this will be 56. 56. The remainder is 4. So there's a couple ways I could write this, right? As a mixed number, I'd write this as 17 and 4/8, but then we can simplify the fraction part to 1/2. So the answer would be 17 and 1/2. And remember, the unknown is a percent, but because it's set up as a proportion over 100, it already correctly is a percent. We don't have to convert it. We don't have to multiply by 100. It already is a percent. So I can just put a percent symbol. And that would be the answer. If you wanted to write it as a decimal, right, as a decimal answer, then it's exactly the same thing, except when you divide, we'd have to put a decimal point here and then add some zeros and just keep going, right? So let's just do this. So this would be, again, 1, that's 8, subtract, bring down to 0. 8 goes into 67 times, so 7 times 8 is 56. Subtract 4, bring down the next 0, and 8 goes into 45 times 0. So then another way of writing this is x. Instead of 17.5, I can write it as 17.5, right? We know half is 0.5%. Either way, again, it depends. Sometimes when you're doing my-open math problems, they will want the answer in a particular form. Other times it doesn't matter. Okay, and then to finish up the section, let's just do a couple of problems from your homework from my-open math. So this question says 280 is 20% of what number? So you can either set this up as an equation or you can set it up as a proportion. It doesn't matter, whatever way you feel more comfortable. Just for variation, let's do this as an equation. So I have 280 is, remember we translate that to equals, 20%, usually as an equation, write it as a decimal, right? So this would be 0.2, or you could say 0.20, of times what number, and that's our unknown, which is x. Okay, so this is going to be 0.20x is equal to 280. So now I want to solve this for x. How do I do that? Well, it's being multiplied by 0.2, so I need to divide by 0.2, right? I want to get a 1x there. But whatever I do to one side, I need to do to the other side. So I will do this long division over here. Again, you could just use 0.2, right? It's going to give you the same answer. Here I have to move it 2 places because I'm choosing to use 0.20. And now I have to divide 20 basically. And if I use 0.2, I move it 1 place and then divide 2 into it, right? It's going to give you the same exact answer. So 20 goes into 28 once. So 1 times 20 is 20. I subtract. This is going to be 8, 0. 20 goes to 84 times. I multiply, I get 80. Subtract, bring down another 0. 20 goes into 0, 0 times. 0, bring down, whoops. I'm going to get another 0 there. And then I have to put another 0 there, right? So it looks like x in this case is going to be 1400. And that would be our answer. And we could check it, right? If you did 0.2, 20% of times 1400, you better get back 280. Okay, so another question. What percent of 180 is 225? Again, we can either set it up as an equation or we could set it up as a proportion. So let's just do an equation again. The unknown now is a percent, right? So that's our x. So what percent x of 180, so times 180, is equals 225. Remember, of is interpreted as multiplication, right? And is equals. And of course, x times 180, we wouldn't really write it like that. You'd write it as 180 times x, right? 180x equals 225. And then how do I solve for x now? Well, I have to divide by 180. Depends how you want to do this. Often we'll just divide it out and write it as a decimal. So if we do that, you could also keep it as a fraction though. But let me just do it as a decimal. So 180 goes into 125 once. So this is 180. I subtract 45, bring down the next 0. 180 goes into 45 2 times. So 0, 6, 1, 3. I subtract. This is going to be 9, and then bring down the next 0. And then 180 goes into 900, I guess, let's see, 5 times, right? Actually, it's going to be exactly 5 times. 0, 4, and then 9, and 0. So x is equal to 1.25. But because my unknown was a percent and I'm writing it as an equation, I have this one additional step where I actually have to write that decimal as a percent. So I have to multiply by 100, or equivalently just move the decimal point 2 places to the right, and then attach a percent symbol. So that would be the answer. So it's 125%. If you solve this as a proportion, then you wouldn't have to do that additional step at the end. The answer already would be 125. It would already be as a percent. Okay, and then let's do one more. Okay, so in this question, it says 30 is 60% of what number? Just for some variation, let's do this. Let's solve this as a proportion. Okay, so remember that we set it up as amount, right, over the base equals percent over 100, right? Amount over the base equals percent over 100. That would be our proportion. So in this case, the base is always the thing after the of, but in this example, that's going to be our variable, right? Of what number? So the base is going to be x. That'll be in the denominator. The amount is going to be the other number, which is 30, equals, and then the percent is 60, right, over 100. Okay. Usually so you should find the base first, then the percent, right? Because the percent is the obvious one. And then whatever is left over has to be the amount. So that would be the other number 30. Now I need to solve this. I can use cross multiplication, although I could simplify this a little bit first, right? 60 over 100, I guess 20 goes into both of those. So you could write this as 3/5. So this would be 3/5. So now if I use cross multiplication, I have 30 times 5. I'm running out of room here. I'll write it over here, which is 150, right? Equals 3 times x. Bottom left times upper right, so 3x. And then how do I solve for x? Well, I have to divide both sides by 3. You could rewrite it on the other side, just left it on the right-hand side for this one. And then x is going to equal, well, 150 divided by 3 is 50. So that would be my answer. Right? 30 is 60% of 50. We could check it, right? To check it, I just multiply 60% of 50, right? Let's see if I get back 30. Well, 60% is this 0.6 or 0.00, 0.60 of times 50. So if you multiply that out, we had better get back 30. So this will be 0, 0, 0, 30, and then I need to move it 2 places, so that's going to equal 30. So that checks. All right, great. So that was how you solve percentage problems, either using proportions or using equations. The last section I want to talk about is more on percents, and in this section we'll get into solving more general word problems that involve percents in some way. We'll also talk a little bit about finding percent increase and decreases as well. Great, thanks.